Yeah, so welcome. I'm not sure if we have any attendees with us yet, so we're just gonna wait until we see people start rolling in. And yeah, it's really exciting. Today we have people coming with us to be with us for this hour from Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, Greece, Serbia, Brazil. It's really exciting. And I'm going to repeat myself a few times, but we are talking about market expansion for deep tech startups into the new Nordic markets. Really excited to discuss this topic with you guys. We have amazing speakers, and we'll just wait a few minutes to see that everybody is ticking in. Oh, we have people from Germany. Yes. India, Brazil, hello. Berlin, hello, Berlin. Yeah, and we're already oh, Latvia, amazing, hello. Yeah, I really want to highlight how important the chat is for us. So if you would go and present yourself in the chat, and also when the speakers are doing their presentation, if you feel like asking them questions, I will make sure to take up whatever we can manage in the end, in the second half, where we have the discussion in a panel. So please give us any questions you may have in the chat. Okay, so yes, I'm going to repeat myself here because I think we have a few more people on the line. We are Scale Up Champions, and we're here today to talk about market expansion into the new Nordic markets. And we have 3 speakers with us here today. It's a part of a series, so these ladies today is a whole range of amazing speakers that we have. You can check out previous webinars on the Scale Up Champions website, and we have 3 more to go. One tomorrow where we're talking about the southern part of Europe. If you're looking into that, you can go ahead and check that out. But today I would like to give a warm welcome to Trine Ives. You are with us today from Technoport, where you're community manager. Hello, Trine.
Hi.
How are you?
Pretty good. You know, it's really sunny today outside, so super awesome.
Fantastic. We also have from Denmark, AI investment manager in Copenhagen capacity, Lisa Molnar. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, happy to be here.
Good to see you. And third lady, well, four today, is Marika Thru. You are from Startup Estonia. Hello.
Hi, hello to everyone. Really nice to see such an international crowd gathered here.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And I think we should probably just throw ourselves into it. Marika, I would love to just ask you to present yourself, where you're coming from and what you have achieved so far.
Yeah, so as said, I'm Marika, and currently I'm the head of Startup Estonia. Startup Estonia is our governmental program to boost and develop the Estonian startup ecosystem. But my own background is actually mostly connected to the private sector, to startups themselves. I've been working at community organizations such as Garage 48, organizing hackathons in Central and Eastern Europe and other emerging countries. And besides that, also my background is in sales and customer success, working, for example, in Pipedrive, you might know, also an Estonian successful company, developing a SMB tool for sales and management.
That's great. So experienced lady here today. I would like to just ask you, when you talk to the startups that are looking into your market, what would be the first thing that you told them to ask themselves? Like, what would they need to ask of themselves expanding into Estonia or the new Nordic markets?
What we see mostly why startups are moving to Estonia or moving part of their activities here is that it's the seamless business environment what they're looking for, and this fast moving environment. Estonians, we tend to be innovative in the sense that we are open-minded for testing new solutions, and we adapt the same way for our regulations. So we've seen that startups who come out with really unique solutions needing regulation change, it might happen here quicker than in other countries, and I think it's the benefit of the smallness of our country. But second is that, of course, giving you a bureaucracy-free business environment, it actually gives you more time and efficiency to put efforts on your product, which you actually want to build and scale, so that you do less in bureaucracy in building your company and more in actually developing the company itself.
Okay, tell us a bit more about the startups that you work with, and what type of businesses that you see is thriving in Estonia.
Yeah, well, Startup Estonia, we focus mostly, of course, on the startup sector. We, as a governmental program, will look in how to develop the ecosystem as a sustainable ecosystem, so that we would have enough organizations and support given by the market itself, and we could be the ones who could help then with the difficulties which might arise. That is either organizing Prime Minister roundtables or acting and lobbying on the regulations needing to change. One example of those has been in the past years a startup visa program, which was launched back in 2017, and it was actually community-driven effort where the startups came in and said that, you know, we need to bring in talent from outside of European Union, and we all know how the European Union be quite hard with the immigration quotas and everything. And so today we can say proudly that we do have a very nicely working startup visa program, which has brought in more than 2,000 people and has given us actually a diverse startup community here. But besides that, of course, we like to see, and we care about the startups themselves who come to us to ask questions, so that we are closer to them as to our customers, and we see what challenges they have. So that is also traveling quite a lot around in the countries where we see that the foreign talent is coming from. And for us, if one of the questions has been here in the panel as well, to see where the talent is coming from, then for us it has been the neighboring areas and the historic cultural background, which is the same with Estonia. So of course European countries, but then neighboring Europe, so Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, Turkey.
And is there any specific areas of innovation that you see is moving towards Estonia?
I would say that the trend is the same as everywhere globally. So we can't bring out any specific verticals which are only, for example, towards Estonia, but the trends show that we see a lot of them coming with a technological background in blockchain, in AI, machine learning, that they're looking for ways how to come and test with Estonians here. But also if we look at the verticals, then Estonia is quite known for cybersecurity and our governmental competence in that. So cybersecurity startups find their way more often here as well. But besides that, energy tech, green tech, of course.
All right. I know that you also work a lot with corporate institutions, and I would just love to hear a bit more about how you see the ecosystem working in Estonia right now, because you have been growing rapidly within the startup scene for the past years. So, like, how has it been unfolding?
Well, let's be honest, Estonia is a small country. We don't have a lot of corporations here physically and locally available. So for us, it's the open-mindedness, what we need to do, and being globally open for all of the corporations and other startup ecosystems like us, finding those friends for outside of Estonia. And we've seen that in the past years, it has been working very nicely for us that corporations from Asia, from Europe, from US have been coming on a regular basis to visit and also scout, to be honest, Estonian startups and see what kind of innovation do we have, how to invest into them, but more than that, actually provide the opportunity for cooperation so that there would be enough opportunities for our startups to go and scale together with those corporations.
All right. You talk about these, like finding friends. What would be great friends, or what friends are you right now grouping together with, and what are the like targets for this collaboration?
Well, for us, what we see is that more than, of course, the Nordics where we belong in is our own regional friendship, what we have in cooperation, what we want to even tighten more and more. But besides that, as we know that, country borders are not limited anymore. We can travel globally, not taking into account, of course, the Corona crisis, what we have, but on a normal situation, then what we see is that it's not the geographical borders what come as friendship for us, but more as like-mindedness and the beliefs and the values in the similar development of the startup ecosystem. So for us, definitely, we see that in Asian cultures, we find like-mindedness in Europe, of course, Nordics, as I mentioned, but also the same countries what I brought out where we have a lot of talent, a lot of interest towards Estonian cooperation, and that is the Eastern Partnership.
Okay. I was just wondering, now I'm putting myself in the shoes of a deep tech startup looking into your country. Like, how would I go about it if it's my first time expanding to a new market? I think maybe Estonia looks a bit like the market that I'm coming from, so it would be a nice way for me to just test if scaling is what I need to do right now. So what would be some of the advices, services that you would provide from Startup Estonia that I could tap into?
Yeah, well, for Estonia, what we've always said is that, startups don't typically look at Estonia for scaling. Our market is way too small to come and take your scaling efforts on. But what you could look into is looking at it from a creative perspective or from an opportunity perspective, is that can Estonia provide you something what you can scale together with, so that we want to see that it is a win-win situation for both of us, that we are also part of your success story once you become successful. And for that, of course, we do care about when the startups are coming in, is everything what they get here really valuable for them, and how long will they stay here? So we've seen those journeys mostly, of course, through the Startup Visa program, as I mentioned before, where the entrepreneurs are coming in from outside of the Schengen area, and for them, the true meaning is the gateway to scaling to European countries. So we are searching for ways of really asking them the questions of where your next markets would be. If it's the Nordics, how we can help you find the partners, help you find your market. If it's, for example, German-speaking markets. So it tends to be that through Estonia, they would want to conquer Europe. If we take Estonia and our own startups, who start from here, are from Estonian nationality, let's say, for example, then for them it's a different case, right? For them, it would be mostly that they're looking towards English-speaking markets, which typically are easier to conquer, but have more competition in it. So we also help to see that there are other ways as well, looking at it from a perspective of what your solution actually can provide. And now more and more also, of course, Asian markets.
Thank you, Marika. So I'm now looking into the Danish market with you, Lisa, and really excited. You are an AI investment manager in Copenhagen Capacity. Would you just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So in brief, Copenhagen Capacity, we are a government-funded but privately run organization, and we help companies, I especially help startups with any support they need in coming to our region. which I should also say includes actually southern Sweden, because we are one metropolitan region here in Copenhagen. So that's everything from if you need a market overview or benchmark analyses to actually establishing your business to once you've come here, things like talent attraction and expansion. And we do that totally for free and totally confidentially. I especially work with AI and deep tech companies. And prior to joining, I came from the private sector working in AI. And I'm also, in my free time, I'm part of a support organization called Nordic AI, which supports the ecosystem here in the Nordics for AI companies. And I actually run the AI Copenhagen meetup, if you'd like to join us next week, where we're talking about sustainable machine learning.
Amazing. So let's take a deep dive into the Danish market, Lisa. So we got this like high quality crafted design, famous architecture. We have huge medtech and green tech corporations. But what would be the reasons for me as a startup coming to Denmark? Because I'm not maybe going for the design.
That's true, and I mean, like the Estonians, of course, people don't necessarily choose Denmark because of the market. Most often, for startups, they choose Denmark because it's a first mover. So we're very, very early and very fast on innovations in certain sectors, especially medical, green tech, clean tech, mobility, smart cities, etc. Secondly, if you are an AI company, I know many of you who are listening are, they come here for the data. We're known for extremely rich registry data and accessible data, especially in things like healthcare and population data. There's been many cases of public Danish data being used at startup companies to create a great use case and something that can then be scaled outside the country.
And looking into the Danish startup ecosystem, I know you're not coming originally from Denmark, so maybe you could tell us this tale by also telling a bit about how it is to arrive and be as a foreign citizen in Denmark.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can't tell by my accent, I'm originally from New York. I would say that if you are a expatriate or a foreigner that's coming to our ecosystem, one of the best things about Denmark is that English level is very, very high. I don't know if we're number one or number two in Europe, but it's used in all business contexts. And on top of that, all of the relevant paperwork and visa work that you need is done in English and can be done very, very easily. If you're opening a company, it can be done in less than a couple of hours online, totally in English. Right now, a lot of companies are looking at, example, COVID-19 support packages, which are also totally in English. So I think that makes a huge difference in your ability to integrate and also to use your talents in the industry and get a job that really pushes you to the next level. Whereas I've also lived in other countries, I've lived in the Middle East, where it's maybe much more difficult to break into a high-tech job.
So looking at the Danish startup ecosystem and all the players that are part of this ecosystem, what are some of the advantages or services that really support startups?
I think the biggest advantages for startup support is, of course, the public funding. I think that does set the new Nordics, not just Denmark, but all of our countries apart from the rest of Europe, especially at the early stage and the pre-seed stage. Some of these instruments from, for example, the Industry Foundation are really instrumental in getting companies off the ground. And secondly, I would say that we have a very open networking environment. There's, even now during COVID, there's webinars and meetups where you can meet people. It's very easy to get access. If you come here and you need to meet business angels, you can definitely do that in, within 1 month, let's say, you can probably meet 10 to 12. And that openness is really important.
Okay, but it sounds like it's all a walk in the park. Is it that?
It sounds like a walk in the park. I think in a business environment perspective, you will find that there's not so many barriers for you. I think from a personal perspective, you may find that Denmark doesn't rank highest on the ability to make friends in a short amount of time. It might not rank highest on friendliness compared to a place like the US. That's definitely true. And I think that, again, is the case for all the new Nordics.
Right. Okay, so could you tell us a little bit about how you work with the startups on a daily basis?
So normally if a startup is coming here, of course, they may be thinking, why am I coming to Denmark? What am I looking for? What's the purpose of being here? We often help startups with the setup where they, for example, if you're a medical startup and you would like to get access to the Medicon Valley, it's actually the third dentist area of medical companies is here, outside of Basel and Boston in the US, then normally they don't really have the money to just move here. That's not really realistic for a startup, especially at the early stage. So what is a setup that works for them? Often it's something like a flex desk, where they come and they stay here for a few days a month and just meet with clients and meet with the ecosystem while they can gain a foothold and get a better business case if they either move here full time or open up an office here. The second most common is they're looking to hire very, very high tech, either PhDs or other researchers. And generally that can be more affordable here in Denmark than in other areas. So they may even be connecting to a place like DTU. And we help them to connect with the right people to hire, for example, machine learning engineers.
Okay. Well, it sounds pretty impressive, but I'm sure there are also some obstacles on the way. What are some of the normal things that you would try to support them with, because they probably have some issues in this journey, right?
Yes, I'd say one of the biggest obstacles is actually right now it's opening a bank account, because while it is very, very easy to open a business in Denmark, we've had some recent events that made banks have much stronger know your customer situations. So if you have not yet settled here and don't yet have a Danish social security number, you may have difficulty just getting a bank account, which you would need to pay your employees. The second one is if you are not an EU citizen, you may find the visa situation can be Byzantine. There's many, many different sets of regulations for immigrants outside the EU, and that can be very complicated to navigate.
Okay. Yeah, it must be. And you mentioned previously that the soft funding was easy in Denmark, and that's one of our advantages. But is it often like relevant for the scale-ups that are entering Denmark?
You mean like if they're coming from already past a Series A and they're a later stage company that's raising a larger
Not
amount?
necessarily. Maybe they just had like a pre-seed round and some soft funding in the country that they're coming from, and now they're looking into scaling. Denmark seems like a smaller country to test, and then they heard about this nice funding opportunities in Denmark.
I mean, that's absolutely a motivation for people to come here, especially during Corona. There's a number of support packages that are maybe competitive in a way that was almost unintended, where companies that had actually thought, okay, I'm going to move to the UK and raise a big round, actually move back so that they could take advantage of some of the new loans and grants for companies at their stage. I'll also say that I do think, especially compared to some of the EU funding mechanisms, the instruments to get some early stage funding are relatively simple in terms of how much paperwork you need and what steps you need to take to fulfill the obligations just to apply. So for example, companies that are not fully headquartered in Denmark are sometimes able to get access to certain instruments that can help them to expand here.
Yeah, because I know, at least talking to the business angels, it's often a barrier, or they need the startups to actually have a local department here in Denmark for them to invest. So what are some of the advices that you give to the startups?
It's true that they need a local entity, but that's not the same thing as living and working in Denmark full time. I think the important thing to realize is maybe a downside and a positive side of Denmark is that trust is what makes the wheels turn. So when business angels say, we need you to be here in Denmark, what they really are saying is, I don't know you, who are you, and I don't trust you. Because legally, of course, it's completely possible that you're only in Denmark part of the time and working with Danish angels and Danish funding. But it's very important at a personal level that there's trust between you and your investors and trust between you and your clients. And that comes from having some boots on the ground or having a good, strong connection with your investors here.
Could you maybe dive a bit more into the trust issue? Because I think it is a general thing also when you talk about arriving in Denmark and finding friends and all these kind of things. Do you think it's a cultural issue in Denmark?
I don't know if I'd frame it as an issue. I think that if you are someone that's interested in what makes society successful, trust is often one of the secret sauce that people underestimate as being so critical to having a good society. The reason that we're able to have, you know, one of the happiest countries that's #1 on all these amazing statistics for happiness and work life is because there's trust. But there is a kind of downside to that, which is that if you're an outsider, people don't trust you automatically. So you will have to take steps to build trust, and that means taking more time to build your network, taking more time to maybe get referrals, maybe not having as much openness to cold emails like you might have in New York, where I'm from, and understanding that relationship building is significantly more important at the early stage in businesses than it might be for some other countries.
So you encourage people to be more direct in their networking, but what if I don't know how to go about this? What would be a way in?
So that's one of the, I think, more positive aspects of our ecosystem, is that the startup ecosystem is relatively open to newcomers, and constantly holding networking events, constantly having places where you can meet people. Even some of the very, very straightforward expat groups like Internations can help you get a foot in the door in just having a small society where everybody is a connection of one more person. You're just 2 degrees of separation. So I think also this might be the case in Estonia. So just spending the time to take in your personal time outside of work, getting to know people, going to networking events, and opening yourself up to expanding your network and your friendships in a way that's maybe more aggressive than you're used to, can have a larger payoff in the long run.
Thank you, Lisa. I think this is a perfect transition over to you, Trinh. Can you just share a little bit about who you are, what you have been working with in the past, and where you are right now?
Sure. I was just taking some notes because many things actually most things that Lisa mentioned can apply to Estonia as well. And for me, especially, it's a pretty good way how to create the links, because how I got started in the startup world was actually in Denmark when I was doing a year of internship there, and I got sort of pushed to the startup world as well, and found it so interesting that I actually came to Estonia and started working in Technoport. What I do now is that I work as a startup community manager at Tallinn Science Park Technoport, and we are one of the oldest and biggest startup incubator here in the Baltics. So organizing events, workshops, running different programs and projects, that is usually how I spend my days.
What kind of startups do you see entering Technoport?
So since Technoport is already 16, almost 17 years old, then we have by now established our verticals. We work broadly with ICT startups, and what we are looking now is focusing more on the IoT and the smart city startups. Then secondly, we have built up a pretty strong green tech ecosystem from early stage startups to also some scale-ups and traditional companies. And Technoport is leading the only Estonian health cluster. So this also means that health tech is part of our sort of network or interest pool. And we see that in the health cluster, we don't only have startups, but we have pharmaceuticals, the ones that are represented in Estonia. We see some hospitals here, we see some bigger pharma companies. Thanks to having the European Space Agency's business incubation program also set in Estonia, then together with Tartu Science Park, we are officially incubating space tech startups as well. And, you know, there are some smaller projects here and there as well.
Could you tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, what are some of the things that you see that are actually working for the startups when they are scaling?
So I see that we have more and more programs popping up here and there that are now focusing on the scale-ups as well. Because usually when I would meet with a founder, with a startup, then of course I would recommend them to join an incubator or an accelerator. And this is what probably works both in Estonia and in Denmark. Early stage founders usually find their network, their community when they join a particular group. It can be a co-working space, it can be an incubator or an accelerator, and this truly brings out the beauty of the ecosystem that we have here. People are really linked, and I think that this also applies to the scale-up phase. But if you start early, you join an incubator, for instance. It doesn't have to be Technoport particularly. We also have Build It, we also have Startup Wise Guys that are known also outside Estonia, and have also programs and acceleration batches taking place in different countries rather than Estonia. So you already create this community from early on. And in a way, it even goes back to the ecosystem itself, because Startup Estonia is actually bringing together all the ecosystem members and all the support organizations that we have here. Not only do we organize meetups for the startups and the founders, they can come from Estonia, they can come here thanks to the startup visa, but we also organize community events, or Startup Estonia is organizing community events and study trips for the ecosystem players, so the stakeholders, the community members that are making these programs happen for the founders. And this is really beautiful because you actually meet with everybody from early on. You are up to date with their own activities, what is going on, let's say, in your fellow co-working space, in your neighboring acceleration program, and you can share information. And this is really what makes the community and the ecosystem open and also probably quite agile in that sense.
I know you talked about maybe showing some slides. Would that be time for us now?
Sure, we can do that. Actually, just maybe taking together the things that we discussed earlier, then let me just share my slides, just to give a quick overview of what we have going on here in Estonia. So my go-to explanation on how to explain Estonia's startup ecosystem is to compare it with different food items, because that is probably the easiest way on how to make it relevant and relatable. So as a founder, let's say, you come to Estonia, you want to scale up here, or even just find your first steps in this sometimes cold, sometimes a bit warmer country. I would suggest you to go to a salad bar or a co-working space. This is really something that you can mix and match, pick something that you like the most and what suits best with your working style. We have Lift 99 that is really strongly focusing on founders and founder community. We have a Spring Hub that also has a really strong community vibe going on. You can go outside Tallinn, you can go to a beautiful summer capital called Pärnu, and there you can find Forward Space, which is actually a co-working space that was founded by ecosystem members and community people by themselves. So basically they just needed a place where to work. So why not establish a co-working space? My suggestion is always to go and pick something that really feeds you and is also pretty nice looking. So you would go to a sushi set, which is in my sense an incubator or an accelerator. Again, you can pick what suits you best. You can pick something that is a bit more fancier, and in that term I would reflect maybe to the fact that some accelerators take a bit more equity and some incubators are, for instance, a bit more low-key and more relaxed with their programs. Again, it's really different, and the more we go into some focused verticals, then we see that we have some different incubators and accelerators popping up that are really vertical based. However, everybody loves some fast food every now and then. So the people who really want to get started in the startup world, hackathons or the pizza slices are your go-to. So whether it's a 3 a.m. snack for you or really a one-time hackathon experience, you never know. Maybe you get stuck into the world. For the ecosystem players, there are some low-hanging fruits or some high-hanging fruits, and maybe grapes are a good example of how the different support organizations are run. We get different projects, and sometimes they really bring some good value to the ecosystem. For instance, I am with Technoport also part of the Scale Up Champions, which I think is a really big step for us to now start supporting the deep tech field and also the scale ups. Marika can maybe later explain a bit more what Startup Estonia is doing by handing out some relevant grants to ecosystem players to really create these new programs for the startups and for the ecosystem. And this year we also see that now we have some more scale up focused or deep tech focused programs coming up in the second half of the year. And of course, sometimes you have to celebrate, and this is the time for the champagne, where you celebrate the success. And of course, we have a more vibrant and growing ecosystem of investors here as well. So Estban, the Estonian Business Angels Network, I can only speak so much by telling that they really get along with Finnish business angels. I also know that Danban is a good friend of them. Now we see that we also have new investor communities popping up in the Baltics. So Latvian Business Angels Network, I know that there are also Lithuanian business angels forming together. So this ecosystem is also growing and also becoming more focused on different verticals. We, a couple of webinars ago, had a session where Karma VC was here as well. And they are known for really investing to deep tech startups and also at later stage. So that's pretty much it from my side.
Fantastic. And before we move on to the panel discussion, I just want to encourage all the participants and attendees here today to ask some questions, because we are able to take them up in the final part of the discussion. So if you thought of anything you wanted to ask these three awesome ladies about, put it in the chat. I'll make sure to follow up on it. All right. So I was just thinking, I would like to ask all three of you, like, when do I figure out what the right time, like when is the time to scale? Because I know a lot of startups are like talking about this. Oh, we are deep tech startups, so we are born globals. We need to find out immediately how to scale. We are discussing our budgets and we are talking about who to collaborate with, but we don't necessarily know exactly what is the right time for us. What would be a reply for those people asking these questions?
I can start. I don't think there's an easy answer for this because it depends on your business model. But for anybody that is calling in from the new Nordics, the time to scale is probably now. New Nordic countries, we need to speed it up. Definitely, I see a lot of founders hesitating to scale because they want to perfect their product. They want it to be totally perfect before they push it off into the market, which is great because we have really high quality technology and we have a good reputation for our technology because of that. But it also means some companies that I see are much too slow to market. That's only our ecosystem here that I can speak for. So I welcome input as well from the other ladies.
Yeah, because I know you're talking about the business models that we see in deep tech. It's of course most often B2B or B2G. So it's kind of that figuring out, like, I have to sell in my own market, but how much should I have sold, and do I need to adjust my products before I scale? So it's kind of tricky, right? Trine, you're nodding.
It is. I would say that it's always really, it comes down to what the potential investors might say, what the business plan is or the business model, and where the founders deeply feel connected. But sometimes it makes sense to also follow the trends. What is going on in the global sense, and perhaps now is the right time for you to really take that step also, because somebody else has already created the path for you. And coming maybe a step back even, is that we see that with really these deep tech-driven projects, you sometimes even lack a person who could do the go-to-market for you. So we are lacking salespeople. We are really lacking the people with the business mindset. So I would even encourage that the people who are working on a really scientific project, but there is a value, there is a business value, then I have seen cases where the founders think that they can do the sales talk by themselves, but you really need, even with a simple B2B startup, when we just compare the deep tech and let's say a SaaS product, then even in that sense, you need a person who is really good with sales. And they also bring in the value and the knowledge on how to scale, when to scale, and where to scale.
I think that's a super good point. I'd also like to say that definitely with the deep tech startups, there is a tendency that because some of your talent is very expensive, that you decide that your technology alone is enough to be the sales point because it's so good. And I've even seen cases where an almost identical technology from the US raised 20 million in a seed round. And when you lifted under the hood, there was nothing there. It was a company of salespeople. Whereas the company that was based here in Denmark, which had a small seed round, was just perfecting their product and perfecting their product and perfecting their product and never really made it out to market, even though it was obviously significantly better technology.
I think that the comment section says it really well, that Finns and Estonian hate doing sales, but Danes are great traders, and Swedish are good in marketing. So this shows we need some more collaboration in the new Nordic scene.
Yeah, and of course that might be a bit generalizing, because I do think that we have like some talent in common, but again in Denmark we know that the talent is high within the technical side. So we have some institutions that are really supporting this development in the deep tech field. But I see there are like other barriers or difficulties working with deep tech startups than working with, for instance, B2C startups. Could you maybe try to unfold that a little bit? What are the differences in when scaling?
I don't know who the question was referred to, but I'm going to take the previous one. I didn't answer the previous one yet. So I would say that maybe like the previous speakers were saying, like it is so different for every startup, but definitely the component of the free is very important, like timing, when to actually make that decision, then with who. So what team do you have? You need to really look at the team if you're ready to scale, because if you don't have all of the components in the team, then you might want to scale, but you're not actually ready for this. And then of course the product itself, will it be ready to make that next step forward? And I know that the previous speakers were saying that, you know, we are maybe even too long here in the region sitting on our products and developments before we are ready to take it to the next level. But at the same time, when we do, then I would say that we just look at the risks more. We don't want to fail that much, right? So I think this is also common to our cultures here, that failure culture is not that taken yet in the society. It's not that normal yet. So that's why we want to perfection everything before we go out and before we put our name to it and before we actually take the market up. But then the fourth also, do you have money to scale? Really important, right? And even if we can say today that in the new Nordics we have enough money in the pre-seed and seed stage, we don't have enough in the scale-up stage. Mm-hmm. So and this is the logical thing which comes in with the smallness of our market, with the opportunities we have here, or the funds who regularly come and visit us, right? So is the capital actually available? And I think like putting all of those components together, it's a bit of luck as well. Whether you can match all of those things right in the moment, and then take the opportunity for scaling there.
I agree, and I also wanted to add that the final point that Marika pointed out, having the investors here and having the capacity to actually invest to, let's say, deep tech scale-ups, is probably a bit optimistic if we look at the current investment scene. In Series A, most of the startups, I would also say that in Denmark probably, they go out and they try to bring in some foreign investors. And this is also where the smart investment or the smart money definition comes in, because you really want then the investor to work with you, to really bring the external contacts to you and help you invest and raise funds in the next round.
So Trine, would you say that it's impossible to scale without an investor on board?
I would say that if we are talking about deep tech startups where the research or just the R&D part is really important, then yes, we see that in most cases you need some external funding for that.
All right. So we do have some questions in the chat, and I see that people are actually searching a bit for what kind of initiatives and projects that are available to them that are across the Baltic, Nordic. So maybe you could also talk a little bit about like what in general, what initiatives are available for the scale-ups? Marika, that might go to you.
Yeah, very good question. I was just starting to think, what do we have like actively? What kind of initiatives are running currently? What we can, promote and advertise to the deep techs? And I think that I would refer this actually to Trine because I know that Technopol is part of quite a few consortiums where the programs are running. Well, beginning with the European Space Agency's international incubation program, which is available here in Tallinn and Tartu, our second biggest city and university city. So that is definitely available. But Trine, what else would you bring out for deep techs?
So first, of course, the Scale Up Champions project that now for the next 2 years can really support the deep tech startups, not only European startups who want to expand to one of the consortium partner countries, but also for our startups or scale ups to really expand their business abroad.
What are some of the offers in the Scale Up Champions?
Well, what we will do later in this year is that we want to establish an online incubation program for all the deep tech startups that would like to apply and get involved in the scene. And next year, when hopefully the borders are open again, we will also have these market discovery missions, plus some actual matching with corporates, with investors. And it will be really handpicked selection of startups, handpicked selections of, let's say, corporates. And we are scouting corporates for this activity in all 5 countries. Marika mentioned already that, yes, we are lucky to be part of the European Space Agency's program. This is really opening doors to many space startups and space tech teams, and they are not only looking for the startups who are basically building something here on Earth for the space, but vice versa. So we can use the space technologies or the systems up there to improve the life here on Earth, so to say. Third, I would say that when we are looking at the region in a larger scale, then especially for early stage startups and for early stage team, we have this fund Interreg that has been funding different European projects through different ecosystem members over the years, and I know that they are also opening a new round next year, and they are working on it to make it even better than it usually is. From my own experience, we have been running a program together with Finland by trying to build these Estonian and Finnish teams and really facilitating different investments so that we have, let's say, Estonian startups getting funding by Finnish mentors. Now we are part of a project that is bringing together we have Sweden, we have Finland, we have Estonia, and another project for really, really early stage student teams that would work in Latvia, Estonia, or Finland. So you can see that in this smaller region, the cooperation is really working and is really active, but it's sometimes masked to the regular activities that the local support organizations are doing. Investment-wise, I would say that the Nordic Angel Program has been supporting the startup ecosystem quite a lot. We have seen really beautiful syndicates forming by different business angels. I think that NUP or the Nordic Angel Program was also one of the reasons why these angel networks have been growing and have becoming stronger, because not only were they investing to startups, but they were also educating future investors and future angel investors that are now really active in the community. So you see that you really have to tackle the ecosystem development by providing something for everybody. So not only for the startups in really early stage, but also on a slightly later stage, also supporting the investors and supporting the organizations that actually make the programs happen.
Lisa, you're nodding. Do you want to add to that?
I think you covered almost everything. The only one that maybe Nordic Venture Network deserves a mention at the later stage of funding, and another institution that funds similar to Interreg, where it's kind of massed through community initiatives, is of course Nordic Innovation. They are less joint Nordic-Baltic, although Estonia is often involved at some level, but we're still working on some truly Nordic-Baltic initiatives are a little bit more rare. However, Estonia is often in partnership with several of the Nordic countries on the community initiatives.
And something that probably builds a pretty awesome future for us is that the European Commission is now opening up the Digital Innovation Hub sort of investment. So that's, I think that in a couple of years will really show some effect to the local ecosystems as well. When we actually are building these innovation hubs, I think that in the next couple of years, we also see quite many sandboxes popping up here and there. So that really helps to bring the early stage startups to a scale up level and even further.
Thank you. I think we only have 9 minutes left, so I just really want to figure out, like, in this journey, Marika, you talked about I need to figure out when to go, how to go, and how to do it. And I really want to like figure out like what would be some of the first steps to take, because it still seems a bit complicated for me if I'm going to Estonia or Denmark. Like, what would happen in the first few months of my time in there?
Very good question. And this is again a question which, you know, it depends so much of the startup and the team itself. But I will bring you maybe practical examples from what we've seen or who we tend to see coming here more often. These are typically the teams who have established they have found their product market fit in their own country. They have also raised their first seed round, or maybe even, pre-seed seed round, let's say the first round of investment, and now are looking for ways of how to start their path to scaling. So in those cases, we see that mostly those teams tend to keep their part of their activities in the country they are from. And then they scale to Estonia, they establish their office here, as referred in the question as well, asking like, e-residency has become a very attractive way how Estonia has proven itself in the business world, so that you become digitally part of Estonia already, then you find your way to Estonia, you see what kind of services we could provide, and then you bring some part of your activities or business over to here. And this is when the magic starts happening, as we say, right? So you start looking into what kind of markets you want to pull in faster, where you want to go, who are your friends to go with. So that is like finding the investors for the next round or finding the money. It doesn't always need to be an investor. It might be strategic partnership, a corporation who you find, or just going quickly with your pilot customers who are really eager to help you in scaling as well. And then as soon as we start the first path, then typically what comes in is that as soon as you start scaling, you need quick development. This brings you to the need of talent. So I would say that still the combination of those four are the things which really need to work. And in Estonian case, it has proved to be a very good test market, so that if you want to pilot something, you want to pilot, let's say, in the European market, so you want to choose something which would be easy and fast to test with. So going to a small market, having e-residency, for example, even before that, so you have your business, you have the official registered company already, it's easy to come to Estonia. You take the first validation here, and then you start looking for ways of how to bring talent in here, scale the team who could do it with you. And this is the question of how we, the Nordics, are not that good in doing sales or, marketing typically, but I still think that we have been, the new Nordics as a whole, we've been very good in marketing our life and work balance. So people want to move here. And these are typically the positions who are moving here, right? Because we do have talent here locally available, which is mostly product design. We have like technical expertise, but of course always lacking. But then sales and marketing are the ones who are typically the ones who move in, and the C-level positions, of course, as well. I don't know if I covered it. So.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And Lisa, I was just wondering if you wanted to add something to that, because I found that maybe we do see some similarities, but there are also some differences between the countries, right?
In terms of a typical startup journey, I'm not sure if there is a typical journey, but especially if you're talking about the deep tech startups, I do think that when they establish here, it's very common that they immediately look to connect with funding through some of the larger funding mechanisms at a much earlier stage. So whereas I think with the B2C companies, they of course are spending their time talking to customers. And if you're in medical technology, then you'd be talking to pharmaceuticals and clinicians. Within deep tech, almost always some of the early steps involve who are we going to talk to for the next round of funding? Is it within Denmark, or do we need to go to the UK or Germany? Who's the right network? Who's the right corporate partner? And I think maybe that's a difference in the conversations that could be between Estonia and Denmark.
Okay. I think we should wrap up this discussion. I really want to say thank you to all of you guys. I know you have been highlighted in the chat so they can find you and connect with you after, because probably some that are watching this would be interested in going to either of the two countries. And I know you will support them the best possible way. We have been discussing the new Nordic, but tomorrow we have South of Europe, and next week we have CEE. So we do try to cover all of like a lot of Europe to figure out how to scale the deep tech startups, and we will be able to support you in this journey through Scale Up Champions. So go check out the Scale Up Champions website. I just wanted to ask you guys if you have like any final remarks, maybe a bit of a hot tip that you would just say to a startup that is like really listening right now. Oh, they're thinking, yeah. Which means that we kind of pulled all our rabbits out of the hat. That's perfect. So I will just say thank you so much for participating in this discussion. Really interesting chat. I hope everybody's taking some points with them in their journey, and hope to see you again in the Scale Up Champions project. Take care, everybody, and see you soon.
Thanks for hosting the session.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
That's it.